It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, December 4th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's asking who gets the job, Russ?
What job, Rachel?
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I'm Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can keep the season going with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky, and of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We do have your mailbag questions later in the show. But first, we're going to ask two important questions about who gets the job. We're going to start with the goalie question and then get into the what are we going to do when Jamie Drysdale returns question. Both important things that the Flyers have to consider right about now. And looking at the goaltending question, it seems like Sam Ersson is on the verge of returning, right?
Yeah. I expect him to be in next game. So, yes, he's going to return, and that is going to cause a problem.
It really is. And so obviously we're looking at Ivan Fedotov versus Aleksei Kolosov here.
Right.
And you look at overall games played, you have Fedotov 9 games, Kolosov 7 games, very similar record. Fedotov is 4-1. Kolosov is 3-4-0. Their save percentages, 882 versus 892, like very, very close. The bigger difference is goals against average. Fedotov is 3.4. Kolosov is 2.95. I might argue that Kolosov had the benefit of better defense in front of him because he started getting games later, whereas Fedotov had some of those early games, right?
That's fair. I think that's a good adjustment. Yeah.
So I think just like as an initial look at the stats, it's really, really hard to make a decision here. I think, the contract and the salary issue, obviously you're paying Fedotov as an NHLer, you're paying Kolosov on an ELC. So, right. And with Kolosov being able to be sent down without going through waivers, that's a huge, huge part of the decision, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, first glance is both have to be better. That's the right. First glance. But the problem here is you can't hold 3 goalies. It's not a good idea because what's going to happen is Ersson's going to get his normal reps, and then you're now going to split the backup goalie job. And you can't do that. You're holding out another roster spot to do it, and you're doing it just because you're hoping Kolosov doesn't go back home. But at some point, you have to make a decision on one of these two guys and not worry about what Kolosov's going to do this year. Again, if he had a 920, then you'd worry about it. He doesn't have a 920. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to get better. Of course he's going to get better. He's young. But the point is he's not going to get better splitting time at the NHL level.
Right. And that's also the other big difference, right? Where Fedotov is 27.
Correct.
He's a big boy, literally and figuratively, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So he is clearly somebody that's in the NHL or he's not playing, right? He's just not somebody you send down. And again, he'd have to go through waivers anyway. But
right.
I think that, it just a difference in maturity for sure. And I think that, Kolosov is not going to be harmed by time in the AHL. I think the game is similar enough that as long as he's getting reps, that's what's most important here.
But we're having deja vu here. We said this the last time, and
right.
Clearly he did not want to do that the last time, and there's a chance he still doesn't want to do it. And with Ersson back, the Flyers are now going to have to force the issue. You can't just kind of say, okay, we'll keep all you guys. You can't do it. It's not a good thing. Doesn't matter if you're a winning team or a losing team. It's not a good thing because of reps. And so if the younger goalie, and honestly, and I would send Kolosov down. And if the younger goalie doesn't get it and doesn't want to go down, and his agent says he's going to go back because that's what he wants to do, then he's going to do that anyhow. So you can't screw up 2 goalie spots just for the one. You can't let that be Fedotov's problem.
Right. And I think Fedotov has improved enough
He has.
that he has earned at least a tie consideration with Kolosov in terms of quality of play for the most part. I will say that there's some interesting numbers here when you look at all 3 goaltenders and their performances so far. And I think, when you look at their goals against average versus expected goals against average, Kolosov is actually the only one of the 3 that's better than expected when you look at the stats. And I think that's an interesting point, right?
Well, but again, we've noticed that they are playing different in front of Kolosov. They're playing so defensively that they're definitely taking them out of some of their offensive game to do it.
Right. And that's the interesting aspect of it is like, how do you account for that in the numbers? You can't really, to some extent, but Kolosov does have fewer shot attempts on goal that are unblocked. Right. So that's like
That's how
kind
you
of
can
where
tell. It's a little bit
you
of a
look at those
precursor.
numbers, right? That the other 2 are kind of similar, but Kolosov had significantly fewer unblocked shot attempts against. Now, if you look at unblocked shots, save percentage, best to worst, Kolosov is actually the best at saving low danger shots and medium danger shots, but the worst at high danger shots. And that shows where the lack of maturity is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely shows just not being used to the NHL. And yeah, I mean, that I think that tracks.
So, and low danger shots, there's a very minute difference between all 3 of them because, again, they're low danger. Goalies are going to save them most of the time, no matter what. But if then you bump it up to those medium danger shots, Kolosov has a 944 save percentage on unblocked shots. Urson is actually the worst of the 3 at 855. But again, I would argue since he's been injured, he was playing more in those early games when the Flyers weren't playing as well in front of them. Fedotov splits the difference at 875. Then when you go to those high danger unblocked shots against, Urson takes over as the best goalie, which of course makes sense because he has the experience and is a better goalie.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no question. All that makes sense.
So he's got a 917 save percentage of high danger shots, where Kolosov is significantly worse at 625. And that is where I think the numbers show exactly where that, maturity and experience level is.
Sure. Now you have to do is show it to he and his agent and let them say, yeah, okay, Lehigh Valley is fine, but there's a 50% chance that that's not going to happen.
Right. And I think another stat that really shows, needing to gain experience and matches up with the eye test is you look at rebound attempts against per 60, right? So that's how many rebounds are they giving up, and then another shot is coming on net against them. And Urson is the best at that, as you would expect, right? At 5.71 rebound attempts against per 60. Fedotov again splits the difference at 5.99, and then Kolosov is at 6.91. So, significantly more rebound shots against for him. And I think, so all of this is kind of indicative of really where the obvious answer is from the circumstances in terms of not having to go through waivers, from the experience level, and from the maturity.
All that makes sense, except logic can't take over in this because we know that there's this other portion of this that could ruin it all.
Right. And that's what's just so interesting about all of this is that, looking at these options here, it is very clear that Fedotov should be the one to stick around. And I don't think they're going to send Fedotov down at all.
No.
They just won't. And so this is going to be just a decision that Kolosov and his agent are going to have to make eventually, but it's going to, and eventually is like,
well, the Flyers are going to have to make it first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they are. They can't just let it go. They're going to have to make it first. Maybe they wait a couple of games, but at some point it's going to happen. If it hasn't happened after 7 games that he wants to stay in North America, then he's probably not going to stay. Because again, it's easy to say, well, he should want to do that because, you know, he'll develop, he'll be in, you know, maybe a starter in the NHL or whatever. He doesn't know that. All he knows is he's wanted to play in the NHL. Now he's played it. He got his way. Okay. And he's pretty good. He's not great. He's not bad, but he's okay. We don't know what he is as a future goalie. And for all we know, they'll sign Urson at the end of the year for 2 more years. So if they do that, or he has an inkling they're going to do that, then he knows he can't be a number 1 at least for another year. And that may be a deal breaker. Like he may just be fulfilling what he hoped would be an NHL career and trying it. And there have been plenty of Russian goalies and Russian players that come, they stay a short time and they say, it's not for me. And that could happen.
Yeah. All right. We shall see what the Flyers decide and then what Kolosov decides, or if there's some other crazy option that comes up.
Which there usually is.
There is. You never know with the Flyers and goaltenders. But Jamie Drysdale could also be returning soon. And does he get to keep his job on the power play? We're going to talk about that and who his competition is coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I would bet the Chiefs here. Just go with the Chiefs on the money line. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right. On tomorrow's show, of course, the Flyers will be facing the Florida Panthers again. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what came out in the wash in terms of the 4 Nations tournament rosters. We think we know what happened with the Flyers, guys. We talked about that on yesterday's show, but we'll look at the overall rosters as well. Plus, we're going to do a prospect check-in on the World Junior selection camps for Team Canada and Team USA, and the Flyers prospects involved there as well. So jam-packed show tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Jamie Drysdale, man, I feel very bad for him in a lot of ways. First off, just injury luck is not on his side.
I agree with that
right now. And but it looks like, you know, he's been rehabbing. He could be coming back soon. And it begs the question, right? Does he get his power play job back? And if, regardless of that, who is he competing with for ice time here? Because I think the obvious answer is Emil Andrae on the power play side of things. But is that the whole picture, Russ?
I don't think it's the whole picture, but I always want to explain to people, like, I have to take, you know, feelings out of this and have to be a cold-hearted, you know what, when you analyze something like this. And that's what teams do too, for the most part. I don't know if John Tortorella does that all the time. We've talked about that. You can go back to any show and hear that. But in regard to this, I would say he's mostly competing with Igor Zamula. I think he's lost his power play job to Emil Andrae. I don't think he can get that back. Could he get on power play 2? Sure. And the only way to get on power play 2 is to beat out Zamula. So I think that's his path. Now,
or Sanheim sometimes.
Sanheim sometimes. Now, does that mean he should be put right back in? I don't think so. Like, even when he's healthy, he should have to wait for something to happen, guys to start playing bad, trending down, want to make a change, somebody's hurt. You know, like Drysdale, I could see getting significantly more time after the 4 Nations, especially if Sanheim's tired. Like, all of a sudden he's got to play a couple games right away because Sanheim's going to have his minutes cut, or he's even going to miss a game coming back from that tournament. Who knows, right? So I could see that. But like the Flyers can't worry about the future with Sanheim with Drysdale in the sense that, are they going to sign him or not? Because right now they wouldn't. Now that doesn't mean you're going to give him all this rope enough to hang himself either, to prove that, yeah, we can't do that. The team can't do that, because then you're screwing up other guys and also Zamula, because at some point they need to make a decision on him, whether he's going to stay as a Flyer or you're going to dangle him out for a trade someday. That's really where I think they have to be at, because just because of the whole Cutter Gauthier thing, it doesn't mean you have to sign Jamie Drysdale. It doesn't mean that at all.
Correct. And that's the whole, like, are you, all in and poker, so you feel obligated to keep going, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you can cut your losses at any time you want, and it's okay in the grand scheme of things. It's interesting because Zamula and Drysdale's contract both expire not this year, but next year. And currently Zamula is making $500,000 less than Drysdale is. And I think you could re-sign Zamula for less than you would have to re-sign Drysdale.
No question.
For. So that factor is out there, right? And I do think that ultimately, I mean, you can look at the numbers, and I certainly did and dug into them. And Andrae has clearly won that power play one job.
Oh, easy.
Like there's like, once you hit like 2 or 3 stats, you're like, oh, okay, we're done here, right?
Right.
In terms of that. But power play 2, you're looking at it, and Drysdale had been playing, above 3 minutes of power play time per game played, and Zamula was like 1.5 minutes, right? So it's a different kind of approach to your game. And I think that, Drysdale does have the experience.
Yeah, but he's never going to see 3 minutes of power play time again.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is like, can he do that in in half the amount of time?
He's going to have to.
Yeah.
But he only has 3 points, Rachel. Like, what are we talking about? He hasn't done it with all that time in 3 minutes. So if he gets 1.5 points, it isn't going to matter. And I'm just taking it to the extreme, but we expect him to do better, but he hasn't done better in this 15. So in the next 15, he's got to put points up, 5-on-5 and otherwise. You get Jamie Drysdale for points. You're not getting him to move, to be a puck mover. That's not why you got him.
And that's what's interesting, because if you look at Drysdale's scoring, I mean, it's very limited. Both, Andrae and Drysdale only have a goal each, and Andrae has 3 assists, Drysdale has 2 assists. But Drysdale's scoring is essentially on the power play or not at all. Right. So,
I mean, we can both see Andre's making more plays 5-on-5, whether they turn into goals or not is a whole different thing. But
I would argue better defensive plays as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, and the eye test bears that out for sure. And you can see him winning more puck battles along the boards. You could see him making smarter decisions behind the net in the defensive zone. Like, all of those things are happening. And the thing that Drysdale brings you, though, is that speed.
Right.
And I think that obviously Drysdale is better than that, than Emil Andrae. And so,
but not a lot. Andrae knows where he's going, where he goes on the ice, because he's smart and he has just enough speed that it works. He's faster than Zamula. I'll give you that.
Yeah, he is.
For what that's worth.
And that's why you need him in that power play 2 role, in my opinion, because that's when you have more open ice. The Flyers on the rush have been pretty weak overall this season thus far. And if you really are going to use Drysdale's speed, you need to have rush plays, right? And their zone exits have struggled. They're not as strong on the rush until it gets dished out to a forward on a stretch pass, right? Like, the defensemen, other than maybe Sanheim, haven't been good on the rush.
But they don't let Drysdale do that. They've never let Drysdale do that. So it's like you're hoping to see something that they're not going to allow. So it's like, even on power play 2, like when Frost is on power play 2, he is allowed to make some zone entries. Drysdale, not a lot.
No, and so that's why, like, are we going to waste Jamie Drysdale even on power play 2? And should we just put Zamula there and use Drysdale for regular 5-on-5 play more?
No, because his 5-on-5 play isn't good enough. Like, if you have him, you have to use him on the power play just to justify him being in a lineup. But that's not a reason to put him in a lineup.
Right. And that's why this question comes up, Russ, is like, how do you use Jamie Drysdale effectively to utilize his skills to the best of his ability to benefit the Flyers here?
But you could have made
And
that a Columbus issue and put him in the trade. That's what you could have done.
well,
That might have solved things.
yeah, that is also an option that maybe went by the wayside here. But
Yeah.
I think that, it's going to be really difficult to get Drysdale back in the lineup in an effective way.
Right.
And I think,
I mean, they're winning some games now, so you're automatically going to give him his job back? I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so. I really don't. And I think that they're going to put him on power play too, because that's the expectation, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
I
just a
think,
way to give him some time during the game and limit his 5-on-5 minutes, but doesn't make the team better necessarily. It
right,
could.
I think it could, but I just don't necessarily think it will. And especially because we've seen power play 2 recently look a lot better than power play 1 sometimes. And that's without Drysdale. So does that mess with things? Especially because I've seen Drysdale when he does play on the power play, he stays closer to the blue line. Like he
Right.
doesn't cheat in.
No.
And so they've been using a power play model that has, a lot more rotation and a lot more cheating in by the defenseman. And that's not Drysdale's style. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that, comes to pass when he does get back in.
I think before the trade deadline, they have to decide, are we re-signing Zamula next year after next, or are we going to re-sign Drysdale? You have to know that in advance. Like, they're never going to tell us that, but you have to know as an organization to kind of plan things out a few years in advance. And if the answer comes up, we don't know what the role is for Jamie Drysdale, then you have to dangle him in trade deadlines, unless you have a feeling that you're going to have a different coach next year. If you think this will be the last year of John Tortorella, and maybe the organization knows that, we don't. But if they do, then you have to decide, if we bring the next coach in, is Drysdale going to be back to being Jamie Drysdale because he just didn't catch on with this other system? You could make the argument that was part of the Shane Gostisbehere thing, but my argument with Shane Gostisbehere was he was just trying too hard. He was just at some point just could not play in Philadelphia anymore. The pressure got to him and he needed to get out. And when he got out, he was better because a lot of times he didn't have to play much defense at all and his offense shined, but he just needed to get out because he was trying too hard. He was saying it didn't bother him and he loved playing in Philly, but subconsciously you could tell it was bothering him because you could watch him play and he was a different guy.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it plays out with Jamie Drysdale. In the meantime, y'all have some really good mailbag questions for us to answer. We're going to get to them coming up next. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. You can join over 10 million users and sign up today. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this NHL season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And PrizePicks puts members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When picks hit, you can get your money in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app today, use the code LOCKEDONNHL, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Olsen Math starts off with a banger right here.
Oh, here we go.
It applies to us too, I think.
Okay.
He says, do I owe Chuck Fletcher an apology for criticizing his acquisition of Ristolainen?
No, because the term on it was bad. The salary was fine. The term was bad. So you don't need to apologize for that, because even though he's playing now at a very good level, you basically don't want to keep him for the term of the contract. You basically want to sell him off because you know the term isn't great and you want somebody else to have that problem who maybe doesn't have cap problems. So I don't think you apologize. I think the thinking, was okay that Chuck Fletcher wanted to sign him. It was the term that was bad.
Right. So he's got 2 more years left on that deal. And I agree with you. I think that if there was even one less year on that deal, I would feel a lot better.
Everybody
about
would.
it. So, I mean, obviously 2 years less would have been better. I think in a perfect world, that contract should be expiring this year, and
Correct.
Risto would be in a great position to earn a new
Yep.
good contract.
Yep.
But I think the risk was too high, and we saw that last year with him being hurt, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that
And we're only 25
yeah,
games into this. We don't know if he's going to get hurt or not. We're
right,
assuming he's not, just because, you know, we're
right.
not those people.
So no, you do not owe Chuck Fletcher an apology. I
Nope.
think that we all knew Risto had, skill. It was just a matter of that term. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Andrew asks, is it fair to say that Travis Sanheim has become everything the Flyers hoped Ivan Provorov would be?
No, it's different. I go back to when Ron Hextall drafted Sanheim, and Hextall said they got him because he was like a rangy defenseman. And he is still that rangy defenseman, and now he's like 210 pounds or 15 or 20 pounds of muscle as that rangy defenseman, and has really turned into something. So that vision was different. Ivan Provorov didn't have a chance to be that big, muscular guy, but what Ivan Provorov was the best conditioned guy, and a guy that could definitely play the position, but then not as a number one, but he had to be a number one because the Flyers didn't have a number one. So I think it's different.
Yeah, and Ivan Provorov, I think, is overall a better skater.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the skill
But Sanheim's
set
skating
is
has improved a lot. This year it's noticeable.
sure. But I think Travis Sanheim can do the not meant to be a number one, but is a number one thing much
He does it
than
better.
Ivan
Yeah.
Provorov. And
No
I think
question.
that's what the difference is there. John asks, Noah Cates is a natural winger. Why is Torts determined to play him at center?
Why did he play everybody out of position? This is a question I've been asking since the early 2000s when he was with Tampa. Like he plays everybody out of position. Cam York played out of position. Travis Sanheim for a while played out of position. Like you just go down the list. Matvei Michkov played out of position for a while. Like why?
That's true.
This is what he does. I can't explain it. Sometimes it works for some players. It never works for all of them.
Right. And I think, at least in my estimation, the reason why Torts does that is because he wants everybody to have a complete game.
Mhm.
And I think that he needs to let go of that thought that not
Yes.
everybody has to have a complete game. You
No.
talked about Shane Gostisbehere earlier,
Yeah.
right? Shane Gostisbehere will never have a complete game,
No.
right? And I think he would have suffered under
Oh, he
Tortorella.
would have. Absolutely.
And I think there is something to be said for having a team mentality and play a team structure and team defense. And that's true, but there has to be like 25% to a third of every player that gets to do their own thing and utilize their skills to the best of their ability. And I think Tortorella minimizes that too much sometimes.
He does. He does. He plays the safer side of that.
Right. And I think, you want at least half your team to play complete games, right?
Right.
Because you have to have some flexibility. You have to be able to play some people out of position sometimes,
Sure.
but not as often as he does it.
He was
But
doing it
it's
for a full season last year.
right. And it's a really good question. I
It
think
is.
it's just a matter of system and style for Tortorella. And Noah
It is.
Cates is just one of the people that
He happens to be talented enough where he could do
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and especially because
Because
he's
it's
good at
easy
the
to go from
faceoff.
center to wing. It's hard to go from wing to center.
Right. Right. Well, and like I said, he can handle the face-offs, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
as
The thing
well.
that Torts had a break with was that Cates learned how to play team defense at Minnesota Duluth, where they're great at it. So he did that his whole time there. So it wasn't as bad of a transition as it would be for somebody else.
Correct. Eugene asks, I always wonder how they get player ice time, speed of shots, skater speed, etc. I stumbled across a video explaining that the puck and players have tracking devices. My question is, how useful of a tool is the edge data for coaches and players?
Well, I hope Gary Bettman's not listening and the edge people aren't listening, because a lot of that stuff is minutia. It's just, I mean, do I need to know that Travis Sanheim skates more than anybody in the league? Meaning the furthest distance. They're all playing the same position. Is that a positive? It's not necessarily a positive, but it's not a bad thing either. It's just how he plays his game. So why do I need to know that? I think the worst thing that ever happened to Owen Tippett was to find out that for that moment he was the fastest guy in the league, because now it gets used in every broadcast, but it hasn't equaled points for him this year. So I think there's more negative than positive, and if people at home enjoy it, hey, that's great. Do I need everybody's name to be highlighted on the power play while it's going on, like a video game, like like EA Sports? No, I don't.
Yeah, I think it does have some intriguing aspects to it in terms of you talk about the who skated the furthest. Well, that could help in terms of wear and tear and maintenance, right? In terms of keeping
Okay.
track of those things. I don't think it changes anything on the ice during the game in terms of, how you're utilizing somebody, but it
Right.
could in terms of how you manage their gameplay and their ice time a little bit.
Okay.
I do think it's helpful in terms of zone information, in terms of where players are starting and where players are getting their most
Oh, sure, but
successful
you could have
shots
someone track
from.
that too. People
Right,
chart that stuff.
that's the thing, is you don't necessarily need the edge data for that, but maybe it saves you having to do it yourself and you get it automatically. But I don't know that there's a huge benefit from it, but I do think there's some little things that you get out
You
of it.
want a big edge in technology? Put a chip in the puck so we know when it's over the line and the goalie's not hiding it in his glove. That would
Seriously.
be a big edge in technology.
Seriously, I think that is the thing we want the most. And we get the little glowy puck again. So
No,
that
we don't want that.
no, here's where I just want the glow puck. Just if it crosses the line, then it glows.
Okay.
That's it. That's it.
So when the ref picks it up, he knows, okay, it crossed. That's fine. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Last question. We had a show last week about getting Tippett, Forster, and Farabee going. So Emster _P asked, let's move them now. Columbus and Minnesota are available to dance. And now I'm asking, is this still true after the Jiricek trade, or are those teams kind of done?
I think a couple of them are done. Ottawa's not done. I think Ottawa's looking to make trades. I think Buffalo would make trades. I think Nashville would make trades. I don't agree with moving all of them, and I don't think you can move Owen Tippett with that contract they gave him now. Nobody's taking that right now. So Farabee, yeah, I think there's something to it, because I think enough people saw him play with the NTDP and could say he has regressed under Torts. We could do something with him. And then Frost is the other one. Frost is always going to have trade value.
Well, and Forster, they're not going to trade.
Forster are not trading. You don't trade goal scorers.
Right. Yeah, I do think, again, Columbus is right next to the Flyers in the standings. I just don't think it makes sense right now.
No.
For them to be having a trade with us.
Ottawa and Buffalo. Those are teams that are looking to deal.
All right, that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Again, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk Four Nations rosters. We're going to talk Flyers versus Panthers and look at the World Junior selection camps. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you want your question answered on the show like we did today, you can let us know through any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at @rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on those same socials. That's SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.